Police raided more than 30 addresses across southeast Queensland, charging 17 people with trafficking. The drug raid quickly expanded into a chemical emergency after police found the laboratory still in full production, fearful of a fire.
Illegal amphetamine drug labs. Hidden, silent. Now these killers are commonplace. Chances are you may have one in your suburb. Last year, the number of illegal drug labs found in Queensland outnumbered every state. And, just as staggering, intelligence suggests only 10% of the actual number of drug labs have been located. While the drugs produced from these illegal laboratories are dangerous enough, the process of manufacturing these drugs can have lethal consequences, both for the drug producers and members of the ambulance, fire and police services responding to a drug lab incident. The purpose of this audio-visual presentation is to give you tips that could save your life when dealing with clandestine drug labs. First, we want you to be able to identify a clandestine drug lab. In Queensland, the number of drug labs has been on the steady increase, and chances are you may be called to one in the near future. So, what is a clandestine drug lab, and what does it look like? We can be forgiven for thinking of the school chemical lab, but the reality is far from the truth. It can take many forms, but essentially the aim is the same: the manufacture or synthesis of controlled substances. The most common form appears to be the box lab, designed to be portable. A typical box lab includes glassware, such as condensers, reaction vessels, beakers, heating equipment, rubber hoses and water pumps. Chemicals may also be included. Many of the chemicals used are invariably found in the common kitchen, are caustic or corrosive, with the potential for noxious and harmful fumes. Drugs that can be produced in these labs include amphetamine, methamphetamine that can be swallowed, inhaled, smoked or injected. The final product can be presented as powder, crystal, paper, tablets or oil. Drug labs can be active, where a cook is in progress and chemical reactions are underway, stored or used where vessels contain liquid but no reactions are taking place, stored or unused, the presence of chemicals and or apparatus but no mixtures of chemicals, used sites where cooks are suspected of having taken place.
Tucked away in a machinery shed on a back road at Jimboomba, it produced hundreds of litres of chemicals called precursors, the basic ingredients needed to produce amphetamine.
Precursors are the products that can be used for legal purposes, but when combined with other products can form a dangerous drug. There are numerous forms of precursors, from pseudoephedrine, used in pharmaceuticals like cold and flu tablets, to iodine. The process of pseudo-extraction using methylated spirits is itself highly dangerous. Microwave ovens and stovetops are used by cooks to speed up the process, often with disastrous results. Clan labs in Australia are often located as a result of explosion or the reporting of unusual odours.
Well, when we walked out, I got a taste in my mouth.
Oh, you could smell it a bit and taste it.
If you enter a building as a result of a routine inquiry and you smell a strong smell of methylated spirits or other flammable liquids such as acetone, consider your own safety. While chemicals at clan labs can be stored in their original containers, often they are stored in soft drink bottles. Alarmingly, hypophosphorus acid looks like water and is commonly stored in commercially sold water bottles to avoid detection. The water bottle is usually stored in a fridge, and it's possible paramedics could be called to treat a child who has sipped what they thought was water from such a bottle. Such a poisoning should raise suspicions with good reason. There could be a clan lab around the corner. Compressed gases common at drug sites are anhydrous ammonia, hydrogen chloride, LPG, nitrogen and butane or propane. It all adds up to a deadly cocktail. And the most dangerous stages are the reaction and distillation stages, when quantities of hydrogen iodide and phosphine gases are being generated, causing a life-threatening situation.
Fearful of a fire or explosion, they called in fire units and ambulances.
When exposed to a clan lab, your health, quality of life and very survival will depend on the process and chemicals used, the amount of exposure and your age and health.
There are some fairly serious health effects with this stuff.
The first breath you take in a clan lab could be your second last. It's that serious. 2 breaths and you're dead. 10 Clan lab hazards. Flammable and or explosive and acutely toxic atmospheres. Aggressive and violent offenders. Leaking or damaged compressed gas cylinders. Clan labs in confined spaces. Water reactive and pyrophoric chemicals. Damaged and leaking chemical containers or containers never designed to hold chemicals. Electrical hazards and sources of ignition. Chemical reactions in progress, hot and under pressure. Incompatible chemical reactions. Booby traps. Let's examine a couple of typical scenarios. Paramedics are called to a motel room for a collapsed person and find someone unconscious on the floor. Paramedics rush in and examine the patient, but before too long they are coughing and gasping for breath. The same goes for firefighters called to investigate an odour. Stop and examine your surroundings. An active lab may not be immediately evident.
Bravo 123, SIDREP, where the location given appears to be a clandestine drug laboratory set up. We've not entered the building, we're waiting outside. Request urgent assistance of the QFRS, hazmat unit, and also QPS and additional QAS unit as well.
Paramedics and firefighters are called to a single vehicle traffic accident and find a patient with unexplained injuries. Stop and examine your surroundings. Queensland has the highest number of box labs in the country. There may be a box lab on the floor or in the boot. And even though the lab may not be operating, chemicals may have spilt, resulting in exposure. Remember, Clan labs should be treated like a loaded gun, and you wouldn't go into a room if the occupant had a loaded gun. Of course, emergency service personnel have survived exposure to Clan labs and suffered a variety of complaints, from shortness of breath, coughing, chest pain and lack of coordination, to burns to skin, eyes, nose and mouth. Less severe exposure may simply result in nausea, dizziness, headache and fatigue. Chemicals can enter the body through inhalation, absorption, ingestion, direct contact or puncture. In the United States between 1996 and 99, there were 155 injuries to emergency services personnel from clandestine drug labs, and that was only in 5 states.
Brother, call rescue. There's a lab in there.
Police raided more than 30 addresses across southeast Queensland, charging 17 people with trafficking. They also seized firearms.
Handguns, a number of long arms.
With the number of drug labs growing in Queensland each year, the chances are you may be called to a lab soon. The people behind these illicit operations are often part of organised criminal gangs, well-financed and well-connected. Drug lab operators are often well armed with powerful weapons and explosives. They can and do scan police and other emergency channels and display little concern for public safety. Booby traps too are common, like light bulbs filled with explosive material. The light goes on and your lights go out. When entering a dark room, use your torch first and examine your surroundings. Remember, paramedics and fire officers can look like police officers with similar shirts and caps. And paramedics and firefighters need to identify themselves clearly. Some signs may be evident. Unusual or strong odour. Heavily barred windows or doors. Windows blacked out. Laboratory equipment. Excessive rubbish or discarded containers. We implore you to be alert, be aware and be healthy.
The one patient by the looks of that?
There is a large quantity of chemicals and other materials that police believe could be related to manufacturing dangerous drugs.
Police are tasked to shut down labs. Firefighters and race may be called upon to assist with breathing apparatus and to assist investigators. And paramedics may be called to render pre-hospital care. If you have to enter a door and you are not sure what's on the other side, be careful. Take a breath before you enter. Quickly survey the scene for any evidence of a drug lab, but remember, they may not be obvious. Do not disturb any part of the lab. Do not turn off the electricity or water connected to lab equipment. Evacuate the immediate area and don't go back until the area is rendered safe. If a patient has collapsed and beside him is a bubbling clan lab, you must always remember your safety is paramount. You may have to leave the patient there to save your own life. Be alert, be aware, stay alive.